Thank you very much. I should preface my comments by saying that all the photos in the presentation are, except for one, are from our land where I live in Michigan. And the one that's not is from a lake which is down the street from Aquinas College. So they are not the same as being there, but I tried to make it as real as possible. In my talk, I will begin by highlighting in broad brushstrokes 4 cultural challenges we are facing in our evangelization efforts. Then I will propose 2 strategies that I believe could be helpful in countering these challenges and creating authentic cultures of formation for the new evangelization. The first cultural challenge is hyperconnectedness. We are all aware that we live in a technology-saturated culture, which is increasingly separating itself from face-to-face communication and see-touch realities. Much research is being done to investigate the effects of this technocratic paradigm, as Pope Francis calls it in Laudato Si', on our psyches and social lives, especially on our youth, who are growing up with cell phones and iPads in their hands from very early ages. How is humanity being affected by the phenomenon of hyperconnectedness? Luciani Floridi, professor of philosophy and ethics of information at the University of Oxford, coined the term on life to refer to the fact that so many of our daily activities, shopping, work, study, health, entertainment, even conversations, are online. In addition, the personas people adopt on social media are increasingly coloring their lives, so the distinction between online and offline is disintegrating. They are in effect living on life. Floridi and others have compiled the Life Manifesto, which aims to launch public debate about the radical effects technology is having on the human condition. He argues that we are entering into a 4th revolution, similar in scale to the Copernican and Darwinian evolutions. Jean Twenge, professor of psychology at San Diego State University, has done research on generational differences and the effects of technology on youth. Her latest book focuses on iGeners, who are those born in 1995 and later, who grew up with cell phones, had an Instagram page before they started high school, and do not remember a time before the internet. She makes the case that smartphones and other screens promote antisocial behavior, prolong childhood, and increase loneliness, depression, and political disengagement. The results of these and other research studies increasingly indicate that although we are hyperconnected, we are feeling more disconnected than ever before. Another outgrowth of the technology-saturated culture is that our extensive use of technology is profoundly distorting our perception of reality, blurring the distinction between the real and the virtual, and between human, the non-human creation, and the machine. In Chapter 3 of Laudato Si', Pope Francis proposes that the technocratic paradigm is actually causing people to disengage from reality itself. He laments that in contemporary culture, we tend to ignore or forget the reality in front of us, while falling prey to the notion that reality, goodness, and truth automatically flow from technological and economic power as such. Father Cantalamessa, the preacher for the pontifical household, identifies 3 obstacles for evangelization in his book, Navigating the New Evangelization: scientism, rationalism, and secularism. His concerns and those of Pope Francis are related because each of these isms represents a distortion of its real counterpart. Scientism, a distortion of science; rationalism, a distortion of reason; and secularism, a distortion of secularization. Scientism is the philosophical notion that science is the only valid way of knowing reality, and that there is no need for the, quotes, hypothesis of God. Similarly, rationalism is a kind of absolutism which sees reason as the primary source and arbiter of knowledge. Says Father Cantalamessa, rationalism is, quotes, an attitude of isolationism, of enclosure within reason itself. It consists in refusing to acknowledge that there can be any truth outside of what passes through human reason, end quote. While secularism and secularization are both derived from the word seculum, meaning the present time, secularism distorts the true meaning of secularization by reducing reality to the here and now. It effectively excludes the possibility of eternity. Given the prevalence of these ideologies and the prevailing sense of cultural disconnectedness, it is no surprise that people are abandoning God and leaving the church. Recent research undertaken by CARA, the Center for Applied Research in the Apostolate, found that the most common answer given by respondents to the question of why they are no longer Catholic was that they no longer believe in God or religion. The reason, in their own words, Catholic beliefs aren't based on fact. Everything is hearsay from back before anything could be documented. So nothing can be disproved, but it certainly shouldn't be taken seriously. It no longer fits into what I understand of the universe. I realized that religion is complete contradiction with the rational and scientific world, and to continue to subscribe to a religion would be hypocritical. When asked what they would need to come back to the church in the future, the respondents indicated that they would need evidence, replicable, peer-reviewed, conclusive proof of God and of the afterlife. This reveals a third cultural trend. Religion and science are perceived as being fundamentally incompatible. For those with this perception, the decision for or against the church is an either-or, either faith or science, but not both. The scientific paradigm is so inflated in their minds that it has crowded out faith, leaving no room for God. Accompanying this is a fourth cultural challenge highlighted by Bishop Barron, the rise of the nuns, and that's not me, but the N-O-N-E-S's. The nuns are those who claim no religious affiliation, and they are the fastest growing, quotes, religious group in the United States. A Public Religion Research Institute study conducted in 2016 found that 25% of Americans now identify themselves as nuns. The percentage is even higher for those aged 30 and under. A shocking 40% of young people 30 and under currently do not subscribe to any religion. What can we do to counter these cultural challenges and create a culture which effectively forms young people in the faith? To do this, we need new ways of leading persons to a real encounter with Jesus Christ, the Son of God. That is what the new evangelization is about, according to Pope Benedict XVI. How do we lead young people to this encounter? I would like to begin with a quote from the beloved church father, St. Irenaeus. He, meaning God, kept calling them to what was primary by means of what was secondary. That is, through the foreshadowings to the reality, through things of time to things of eternity, through things of the flesh to things of the spirit, through earthly things to the heavenly things. We need to bring people back to God and to the church, to what is primary through what is secondary, through foreshadowings to the reality. This is how God has always guided his people. I propose two ways of doing this. The first is dialogue with science. But how could this be effective since science seems to be causing the exodus of young people from the church? To begin with, since young people today have grown up with a scientific frame of mind, we need to speak their language in order to reach them. This is the starting point for meaningful dialogue. Our Catholic schools, colleges, and seminaries need to educate widely in the sciences. We need homilies addressing questions of science and technology. In short, we need a science-educated Catholic populace. This education should be founded on the conviction that science itself is not the problem. The problem is the ideology of scientism, or as Father Cantalamessa has articulated, the triple ideologies of scientism, rationalism, and secularism. These ideologies have compromised our understanding of science and reason and do not represent the fullness of what the Catholic intellectual tradition has to offer. There are multiple ways that authentic science could be a tool for the new evangelization, but I would like to suggest 3 here. Science as, according to Benedict XVI's vision of reason, as expanded reason, science as sign pointing beyond itself, and science as witness of the faith. Throughout his pontificate, Pope Benedict XVI advocated for an expanded reason. This understanding of reason is fundamentally different from rationalism. Expanded reason is not closed in on itself. Rather, science as an expression of expanded reason explicates the rational structures on which creation is founded. The Church has always supported this conception of science and of a creating reason at the heart of the world. Indeed, one of the great contributions of the Catholic Church throughout history is its demystifying of creation, demonstrating that creation is not the product of mythical forces and beings, but of a loving, creating, reasonable God. The Church has also carefully and consistently articulated the distinction between primary and secondary causes, an especially significant distinction for contemporary culture, since it clears a space for the scientific enterprise. In essence, science is the study of secondary causes in the created world. For Pope Benedict, expanded reason is open to beauty. In a 2008 address to Italian priests, he said, "We are fighting to expand reason, and hence for a reason which is also open to the beautiful. I think these 2 things go hand in hand, reason and beauty. Reason that intends to strip itself of beauty would be halved. It would be a blinded reason." Beauty is not far from science. Think of the beauty of the constellations, the DNA helix, the spiral structures of the Fibonacci sequence, the systems of the human body, and so on. Science as an expression of expanded reason is also connected to the truth. Science pursues the truth hidden in the structures and forms of the created world. In a disengaged culture of relativism and indifferentism, the bond between science and truth is very important. Even acknowledging that there is such a thing as truth can be a monumental step in evangelization. We could use science to help present the reality of truth to our young people, to lead them in the spirit of St. Irenaeus to what is primary through what is secondary. This leads to my next point of science as sign. These are turkey tracks and rabbit tracks. As Max Planck, founder of quantum mechanics, rightly said, science leads to a point beyond which it can no longer guide. Science points beyond itself. Most, though admittedly not all, scientists would agree that science will never be able to understand everything. There is always something larger or smaller beyond its grasp. Articulating the sign value of creation to our young people could help them recapture a sense of awe and mystery at the created world, and might open them to the possibility of transcendent realities, again, leading to the primary through the secondary. In fact, the notion of science as sign suggests an intriguing catechetical strategy. Could we teach about the attributes of God through his signs in the created world? Can science assist us in reading reality and leading young people into a deeper experience of that reality? So, for example, I have always been in awe of the extravagance of nature. Think of the number of leaves that fall from just one tree, the number of seeds produced by one plant, the tremendous energy in the clouds, the millions of collisions of charged particles that produce the northern lights. As Annie Dillard puts it in Pilgrim at Tinker Creek, this is a spendthrift economy, Though nothing is lost, all is spent. Does this not point us analogically to the infinite greatness and extravagance of the Trinitarian God, who gave all, spent all for our salvation? Another example, the analogy of the cruciform creation, proposed by philosopher and Templeton Prize winner Holmes Rollston. Evolution, he says, is natural selection, but also something more. It can also be viewed philosophically as one level of life laying down its life for another to survive. Can this reality be a vehicle for teaching young people about the sacrificial nature of Christ, and perhaps awakening in them a desire to live a sacrificial life? Could this be a foundation for catechesis on the sacraments, especially the Eucharist? Finally, science can be an evangelizing force through its witness. This includes its witness of being at the service of the common good and of helping others. It also includes the witness of many faithful Catholic scientists and even Catholic scientist saints. Here, I would like to highlight one contemporary example, that of the brilliant scientist and geneticist, Jerome Lejeune. He discovered the cause of Down syndrome and was also a devout Catholic who became dismayed that his genetic discoveries were being used to electively abort children with disabilities. Through his science, he understood that life begins at conception and was a fearless advocate of that position, even when it meant being ostracized by his peers. Through his faith, he upheld the inherent dignity of all human persons, including those with Down syndrome and other disabilities. Although rejected by many of his peers, Jerome Lejeune was embraced by the Church. His cause for canonization is underway, and he is now a servant of God. Teaching our young people about the courageous witness of Catholic scientists and scientist saints such as Jerome Lejeune could be another way of countering the disengagement of the hyper-connected culture with a real witness of conviction and sacrificial love. The second way that I would like to propose for evangelization is through elemental land experiences. And here my photos may speak louder than words. In terms of the cultural challenges of technology, we no longer need to wonder if virtual reality is becoming more real and relevant than human or sacramental realities. In today's culture, it is. In response, we in the Church need catechetical strategies geared toward bringing youth into concrete experiences of see-touch realities. As Pope Francis said in Laudato Si', nobody is suggesting a return to the Stone Age, but we do need to slow down and look at reality in a different way. This is a particular dedication of my religious community, the Franciscan Sisters of the Eucharist. We provide elemental land experiences which guide young people into relationship with nature. Experiences such as these help them disconnect from their technology and reconnect with each other and with the natural world. In this photo, these college students are collecting seed from a restored prairie on our land. The simple experience of beauty is a catechetical tool. It restores in youth a sense of awe and an aesthetic of care. Bringing youth into contact with the beauty of the natural world using all of their senses can help reorient their understanding of reality and of where they fit in the world. Further, simple experiences of growing food, picking apples in our orchard, caring for the animals, making strawberry rhubarb jam, and baking bread, for example, are pre-sacramental and can be a way of making Scripture and the sacraments more alive, real, and relevant for today's young people. In conclusion, in the spirit of St. Irenaeus, that God leads us from the foreshadowings to the reality, from the secondary to the primary, I believe that we need more rather than less science, but science as expanded reason, as sign, and as witness. And that authentic science, alongside or grounded in land-based experiential catechetical programs, could help bring young people back to the Church. Together, these two could be an effective catechetical strategy for the new evangelization. Thank you.